I guess, two great people getting together to discuss stuff. Technical issues are the flavor of the season.
Well, and you got to find a solution to that, right?
No, well, hopefully we're not. Na, the Trump and Elon Musk conversation got attacked by like a distributed DDoS attack thingy. So
Absolutely.
no, welcome Dr. Kalyanpur and welcome to everybody. After that brief technical glitch, thank you so much for joining. Once again, this is the Unboxing AI weekly webinar series by CARPL. My name is Vidur. I serve as the Chief Executive Officer. And for those of you who don't know, CARPL, as I've started describing it, is your friendly neighborhood AI platform. Uh, think of us as the single integrator, aggregator between healthcare providers, radiology groups, hospitals, and the entire ecosystem of hundreds of AI developers that are out there building tools to make radiologists faster, better, more productive, and more clinically relevant. And today we are joined by Dr. Arjun Kalyanpur. Somebody I have looked up to for almost the last 14 years, Dr. Kalyanpur, when I first came for your PAX conference. I think it was 2010, 2011. I remember me and Kabir had come and we were like, you know, completely blown away. And since then, it's been it's been amazing to have you as a mentor, and thank you for joining us today. Also, thank you for all the assistance you provide to Kapil. Goes without saying that everybody is a big fan. Uh, I will now take the liberty of introducing you.
Thank you very much.
Uh, for those who don't know, so Dr. Kalyanpur is the founder and CEO of Tele-Radiology Solutions. I think, and I guess most of at least India will agree that he is widely considered the father of Indian teleradiology, and we'll go deeper into that journey. But Tele-Radiology Solutions is a global healthcare company headquartered out of Bangalore, and they report scans for over 150 hospitals in 15 countries, which was news to even me. Uh, and they have been ranked the number one teleradiology company in the US for 2011. So just goes to show the legacy that Dr. Kalyanpur carries, and has also been awarded best in class. So those of us in the healthcare IT domain know what that means. Uh, it's the first organization outside Singapore to be accredited by the Ministry of Health Singapore, and was showcased to President Obama on his visit to India in 2010. So again, goes to say about the legacy of the organization. It also has a software company that develops workflow for teleradiology practices called Telerad Tech, a not-for-profit division called the Telerad Foundation, and a teaching portal called, very appropriately, Rad Guru, and a clinical research group, which is ICL, the Image Core Lab, which we've had the privilege of working with as well. Its AI group is working to develop deep learning algorithms for breast cancer, hemorrhage, and lung diseases. Dr. Kalyanpur himself was trained at AIMS, and as it turned out, while he was at AIMS, my father was at INMAS, and they collaborated on MRI, 25 years ago, which is more than actually 30 years ago. I will not date you guys. And then Cornell University and Yale in the US, and many other accolades that he's got. Thank you, Dr. Kalyanpur, for joining us today.
Thanks, Vidur. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the very
So
warm.
let's start from the beginning of at least the teleradiology journey, Dr. Kalyanpur. First and foremost, why teleradiology? How did you come up with the idea? And then why move back to India? Like, I'm sure you're asked that pretty often, but
So I'll have to answer that in reverse, Vidur. So the decision to move back to India was the first decision. My wife and I were both training in the US, doing our respective residencies and fellowships. She's also a physician, a pediatric cardiologist. And in fact, we got married on the Yale campus back in 1994, 30 years ago. Uh, the decision to move back was personal, related to wanting to be closer to family and wanting to contribute something to our own country. So that decision was taken independently. I had no idea about teleradiology being anywhere in the future. We moved back, and as it happened, I couldn't get a job. So here I was back in India, not able to find a job. And Yale had kept me on the faculty because they were very keen that I stay on, and they were keen that I move back, and they thought I was going to move back. I was doing kind of a back and forth commute in the initial couple of years, working at Yale in the ER, doing emergency radiology, and then in between long gaps in Bangalore. And during one of those trips, a chance conversation with the chairman, Professor Jim Brink, who's today the chair at MGH, at that time he was chair at Yale, he said, why are you doing this long commute? Why don't you just move back? Arjun, we have a job for you. And I said, Jim, it's actually to your advantage if I'm based in India, because I can be covering all your night shifts from there, and it'll be a day job. So it's, it works very well for both of us. And it was like this eureka moment, and this little light bulb went off, and he said, let's do it. And so we started by doing a research project. We published what was the first paper on international teleradiology in the literature, and
When
presented it
was
at
this,
RSNA.
Dr. Kalyanpur? When
This
was
would have
this?
been in 2001 or two,
Oh,
like
wow.
a long time ago. So this got published and presented at various conferences, and uh, that's how it all began. So the first teleradiology project actually was with Yale, and it just went on from there.
How did you deal with bandwidth issues?
Good question. The back then it was, this was literally the days before Skype even. So if for those of you who even remember
And
what
just to
Skype
just to
was.
give context, Dr. Kalyanpur, I see there's a lot of younger teammates of mine also who have joined who crib when the speed goes below 100 Mbps.
I know. No, there are all kinds of interesting memories from those days. Starting with something called an ISDN line, which many of you probably were not even born when we had that kind of connectivity. And there was, the so-called leased line. It was a learning process of evolution back then, figuring out how to connect the dots. I had outages where I had to, literally start from scratch, go pick up the linesman, bring him, have him connect the wires. But then from there we built up, and we hired our own IT team, and it's today we have, I think, a 20-man IT team, which is very competent, and we've obviously learned a lot from those days. But the early days were very challenging, as you correctly point out. Technology outages. We learned to build redundancies into the system. For every network, there had to be a backup network. For every power source, there had to be a backup power source, and all of this gave us the experience to grow along the way.
So was it a tough sell to get hospitals to agree to in a way outsource their nighttime reads to
So yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think the interesting thing in those days, it's the turn of the millennium, was that there were some forces that had already come into place that made teleradiology really imperative. Uh, for one thing, multi-detector CT had kicked in, so there was a sudden profusion of imaging data, and in its wake, the new phenomenon of CT angiography, head-to-foot CT angiography. So what for a patient used to have to go to a cath lab for in the past, now suddenly it had become a non-invasive study which could be done in seconds. I mean, this was the transformation that happened back then, and as a result, hospitals started to see a tremendous growth in their overnight volumes.
Mhm.
And so the need for emergency after hours coverage was very, very marked. And we were there it was a right place, right time kind of situation. So when we started the company, the work initially just poured in. And for us, there was certainly, we had to establish our credibility. It was, we were working from the other side of the world, and we had a lot of there were certain biases, obviously. We put our shoulder to the wheel, and we said we will prove our merit based on quality of our reports. and our communication and our systems and our processes. And so we worked really hard to build an organization that delivered reports of the quality that the hospitals were looking for. And I think initially the growth was slow. It was word of mouth, but slowly but surely it picked up. And today, as you mentioned, we have a substantial practice both in the United States, coast to coast, as well as in many other parts of the world, with radiologists who are also spread over the globe. So half of our radiologists are on US soil, but we also have radiologists in other parts of the world, places like London, Istanbul, Middle East, India, of course, and in the Far East. And so it's a global teleradiology practice today.
So, just for my understanding, Dr. Kalyanpur, when you started this, did the uh, did the VRADs, etc., of the world exist at that time? Like, were there teleradiology companies in the US catering to the US? Did that exist?
So it all started about the same time. This was 2002 we're talking about. And that's when we first had our, we started the company in February 2002, and VRAD had also just opened its operations. There was a company called Nighthawk, which then got acquired by VRAD. They had an office out of Sydney. So there were these three companies. So, and then of course, and it was interesting to see at RSNA, the first year there were this handful of companies, and then the next year suddenly the number doubled, and it continued to go that way. And then of course, various changes came in, but it was at the beginning there was us and these other couple of companies doing the same kind of work, which was providing after hours coverage to hospitals in the US, because the emergency services was where the need was the greatest.
Mm. So, and I think it also, like, of course, the time zones worked really well, right?
Right.
So as we discussed prior to the conversation, prior to this, Dr. Kalyanpur, we do prioritize audience questions over our own discussions. So we have a question from someone who does not want to tell us who they are. Hi, Dr. Kalyanpur. Do you envision a time when PACS can be fully integrated into the cloud to allow teleradiologists to log into different systems without needing different workstations?
So that's a good question, and in fact, the answer to that is that we are already in that era.
Yeah.
I think we've passed the stage of enterprise packs, especially in a teleradiology environment. Our own systems, we use a workflow called RADSPA, which has been developed by our technology group, and it's entirely cloud-based. So our infrastructure for our data that is from our US hospital is a US cloud infrastructure server farm in Colorado. So today, I think all of teleradiology is or needs to be cloud-based, because it gives significant advantages in terms of cost, in terms of redundancy, everything. So yes, absolutely, you're right. The cloud infrastructure is the infrastructure of the future for teleradiology.
Interesting. And I think I totally agree. I think separate workstations are clearly now becoming a thing of the past. You might still need separate logins,
Right.
uh, but separate workstations, physical workstations are becoming a thing of the past. There's another question from a colleague of mine, Sarthi, who also is a physician, just come back to India from Hopkins. Uh, Although he says it's an eventual question for later, but we can take it now. Uh, Having been in the industry for so long, how do you deal with tech debt? How have you been able to decide when to switch over to a new tech stack or a part thereof? So, if you'd like, I can elaborate. Or
Could you repeat the question, please? I
so
just didn't hear.
the question is that having how do you deal with tech debt? So
Tech
tech
debt.
debt, yes. So tech debt, Dr. Kalyanpur, is essentially, you start using one PACS, even if it's your own, and then suddenly some new revolutionary technology comes and you're stuck dealing with that. So that whole
Yeah.
transitionary piece.
It's interesting that we're speaking in the context of this AI discussion, because if anything in the AI world, this obsolescence phenomenon is happening so rapidly. I mean, it was there with it's there with everything. But in the AI world, I think it's something that literally happens on a daily basis. But yeah, it's a very good point. I think what we found is that the systems that worked a decade ago today are not state of the art. So one does have to continuously reinvent oneself. The platform that we use today has gone through several iterations and evolutions since we first developed it in the first half, around 2005, 2006. So definitely this is a constant ongoing process. I would say the challenge is not allow debt to even accumulate. You've got to be ahead of the curve and keep evolving and innovating to stay ahead, because ultimately this is the business, the enabler for your business.
Yeah, I think that's a cool takeaway that, like they say, right, every company is a tech company. So if you're running any company, you have to kind of always think 3 to 5 years ahead in terms of what technology is coming. And, you know, I think not accumulate tech debt is a great thing to put on a wall. So there's another question by BS, who's from the industry, I know. He's asking, did you deploy your own funds initially? Uh, at that time, there may not have been a lot of VC funding or etc. So essentially, your funding journey at TRS probably has nothing to do with AI, but
No, it's a good question. Yeah, absolutely. This company is entirely self-funded and organically grown till death. No funding has been taken. In the initial years, the initial startup costs were based on our savings from the US. We, put so after we finished our training, we both worked for a year, my wife and I, and saved up a little bit of money, and that was kind of our seed funding for the company. So that's how it started, and since then we've basically put back whatever profits we've generated back into the company and into the other entities that now form the other parts of the group, the technology company, the core lab, and the research division, and so on. So everything has been organically grown, self-funded from day one.
nice, awesome. I also have a question.
Sure.
When the first time when you were reporting for Yale, did they ask you for a ISO 27001 certificate?
Well, what they did ask for, it's interesting because, it's another interesting memory. When I was reporting for Yale, and this is back in, 2002, they wanted a security system that would parallel the security system at Yale. So I was literally working out of a home office in those days. It was a garage startup, as you might imagine. So working out of the guest room of my house, and I had to put this very high tech lock on the door with biometrics and the fingerprint technology and all that, just to enter the guest room of my own house so I could work. So yeah, there was some very interesting requirements, and of course the initial security, we had to jump through a lot of hoops to get the first VPN connectivity started. But then that's all par for the course. I mean, I think it's very important in healthcare, IT, and in teleradiology to be completely secure. So that is non-negotiable.
And did you have help, Dr. Kalyanpur, from say, since you were in Bangalore and the Wipros, Infosys, etc. of the world also emerged from there doing, I would say maybe similar work at a much larger scale. Did it help to be part of that ecosystem?
So it's
Just from a pure IT perspective, right? Like all the security, etc.
right. No, it's always been an advantage, I think, being based in out of Bangalore. We've had, obviously a very strong tech environment. From the specific perspective of teleradiology, it's not really been, as you mentioned, the other company that was involved in this space, there was, it worked both ways, because there was some negative backlash that also arose in the early years towards teleradiology. There's some biases that emerged in the industry. So we actually had to work hard to counter those. So from that perspective, yes, it was a double-edged sword. The one of the larger companies that was in the same space since you brought up the question of funding earlier, did come to us with an acquisition offer very early in our evolution. Within literally a year of us starting, they came wanting to buy us out. And our board, we had a small board of advisors, and they told us at that time that, this is, don't do it. You have much to aspire for, and your technology company should be your partner rather than your investor. So we took their advice, and I think it stood us in good stead.
Awesome, awesome. Next up is a question from Bhanushri, again a close colleague. She asks, hi Dr. Kalyanpur, wanted to ask if you're using any AI for reporting.
Yeah, so we are actually working in a couple of areas. One is specifically in head injury and stroke. We have an algorithm which our team has developed in-house, which is for detection of small bleeds, well, for hemorrhages in general, but it's got a high level of accuracy for small bleed detection. Also certain complications, midline shift, associated findings, skull fracture. And so it can be used in both the trauma and stroke setting for determining hemorrhage. So that is one area of focus. And the opposite end of the spectrum, we worked on an algorithm for mammography for breast cancer detection. So we see those two as being the biggest impact areas in AI. One is acute emergencies, where every second saved is potentially life-saving, and also in the area of screening and early detection, where the volumes of data are so massive in screening programs that AI can really make an impact. So we started with these two. We're also working in others, looking at other algorithms for pulmonary embolism, for aortic dissection, and some other areas that we're working on.
Interesting. And I think, even from our perspective, Dr. Kalyanpur, ER reads are turning out to be amongst the lowest hanging fruit from a value perspective. So, pretty cool that you're able to build these in-house and use. And, of course, we've talked about this at length as well. So that is quite amazing. Yeah, we're getting a onslaught of questions. There's one from Anil Yeramasu. He asks, how would you validate new AI diagnostic radiology products, given that the FDA doesn't independently verify the accuracy? So the FDA is only concerned about safety, right, and not necessarily performance or value of AI. So do you have any framework you'd like to advise that you try to adhere to figure out whether an AI system is good enough for clinical use or not?
So in our validations, ultimately, we are, comparing AI performance with radiologist performance. And so the radiologist is ultimately the gold standard. And I think that in the foreseeable future, that is going to be how it will be. The radiologist will form the basis for determining performance of AI. And that could change and will change. I'm sure we'll have a point where we will be using one AI algorithm as a standard to compare another one with. But as of now, radiologist evaluation is still gold standard, both from the perspective of safety, accuracy. Obviously, you run the metrics and do the AUC calculations and all that. But ultimately, you got we do clinical validations with radiologists assessing the AI from the perspective of ground truth.
Interesting. So essentially, today, as we all agree, right, there is no better ground truth than the radiologist report, or like a consensus of radiologists or something like that. But at the end of the day, it does have to be the radiologist. Nice. I do want to bring in your thoughts on what we're trying to do at Carpel. You've seen us even since before we were even called Carpel, and you've kind of seen the journey. So as a provider of care, and this is the shameless plug part, right? As a provider of radiology services, what are your generally thoughts, Dr. Kalyanpur, on this whole platform approach where you test AI, or you even build AI on us, you test on us, you deploy through us, we'll integrate into your viewers and stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about dealing with individual AI companies and all of that. Uh, just would love your thoughts.
No, you're absolutely right, Vidur, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I think you've got a great concept, and I think it's a very important concept of being able to, be a platform that integrates AI algorithms into a workflow. Because, as you know, as everyone knows, there are any number of companies out there developing AI algorithms. There's a lot of funding in that space as well, but there isn't or hasn't been a proportionate amount of effort or attention directed towards this specific area of bringing it together, because ultimately what is going to benefit the radiologist is not the algorithm per se, but how the algorithm performs in that radiologist's clinical environment. And that integration of the algorithm into the radiologist's workflow in a seamless manner is the key, the determinant of how AI will ultimately have any impact going forward. So, what you're doing at CARPL, I think is very important, and the getting that integration right, so that when you're on a single workflow, you can reach all the algorithms without having to, independently connect to each one in a manner that your work list runs smoothly with the algorithms kicking in as and when you need each one. That process of bringing the AI to the radiologist is all important. And I think that's going to be the future, um, whether it's in a teleradiology environment or in a non-teleradiology environment, but particularly in a teleradiology environment where efficiencies are so important to us. A radiologist is performing, is required to, perform it in a manner that is efficient. It's not enough just to report. You're also reporting with a certain turnaround time constraint. So the
Yeah.
AI is only the platform is all important in terms of making that balance between quality and efficiency and turnaround time.
I think that's very interesting way of looking at it. That you can have the world's greatest AI system, but if it's not integrated into my clinical workflow, it's pointless. We are almost hitting time, Dr. Kalyanpur. We have one question from one of the newest members at Kapil, Goranch. Again, one of those MBBS grads who we conned into giving up their lives for AI. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing teleradiology as an industry today?
So it's interesting. I mean, it's obviously the industry. We're 20 years old now, 25 years old, and we've gone through a lot of challenges. As we said in the beginning, technology was a challenge. Moore's law kicked in, bandwidth costs have dropped, quality of connectivity has improved. The technology challenges have been largely overcome, but we have in parallel a profusion of data coming in. So the volumes of data had just magnified over the decades. A CT scan of the brain, which was 100 images back 25 years ago when we first started doing teleradiology, today with the CT angiogram, the profusion imaging, the reformats, the volume rendering, everything, it's 2000 images or more. So we have a 20x multiplier in terms of um, image data to be analyzed. So, and that is where teleradiology really made its impact to begin with, by enabling distribution of load between radiologists, using time zone differences to bridge the gap between hospital and radiologist, and increase radiologist productivity and quality. But today, that same going forward, as I see it, AI is going to come in and assist the teleradiologist. So I see that. I mean, you can choose to look at it as a challenge. I see it as an opportunity. I think the real opportunity here is to manage this massive tsunami of data that we're handling effectively by using a combination of teleradiology and integrated with AI in the workplace to achieve maximum efficiency and throughput.
I think, yeah, that's a cool point to close at, Dr. Kalyanpur. Thank you so much for that. And Thank you so much to everybody for joining. Once again, this is going to go onto our YouTube channel, and we do this every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. India, wherever you are in the world. And thanks, Dr. Kalyanpur, for those insights. And yeah, I'll keep bothering you.
Thanks a lot, Vidhu. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the interaction and very interesting question. Thanks to everyone for being there, and hope you found it useful. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks so much, sir. Thank you.